funeral traditions have barely changed in 50 years. But here's something wild. In the 1960s, a drunk ex-convict stole a body from a casket the night before the funeral, and the story made headlines all the way in Africa.
That's absolutely incredible. How does something like that even happen in a funeral home?
Well, according to this longtime minister I was reading about, the ex-prison mate came to the viewing, got drunk later that night, broke into the funeral home through a screen porch, and get this, managed to take the body out and close the casket back up like nothing happened.
I can't even imagine the shock when they opened that casket the next morning. What did they do about the funeral?
So they went ahead with what they called a memorial service, but here's where it gets even stranger. About a week later, some bird hunters found the body dumped in the woods halfway between Hapeville and Augusta. The theory is that the guy sobered up during his drive and just, decided to ditch the evidence.
That's wild. It makes you think about how vulnerable these sacred spaces can be.
Right? Speaking of sacred spaces, this minister shared some fascinating insights about how funeral practices are evolving. He conducted about 20 funerals just last year, which was apparently a high number for him. He has noticed some interesting trends.
What kind of changes has he observed over his career?
One of his main observations is that funeral services are becoming longer these days, primarily because more friends and family members want to speak. He described this memorable service for a Delta pilot where 9 people spoke, 7 of them former pilots, sharing stories and memories.
That's such a shift from the traditional religious ceremony format.
Exactly. And what's interesting is he thinks some traditional elements should be eliminated entirely. He believes that funeral processions to the cemetery are not only unnecessary, but also potentially dangerous, especially in big cities.
I've never really thought about the safety aspects of funeral processions before. Did he have specific concerns?
Oh, yeah, he witnessed several accidents over his career, including one where a police escort was killed. He also brought up how challenging it can be in his aging congregation to even find enough healthy pallbearers. Apparently, about half of his potential pallbearers have had bypass surgery.
That's a profound observation about how our aging population is affecting these traditions.
And here's something else that surprised me. He revealed that he never received any formal training in seminary for conducting funerals. He essentially had to learn through observation and experience over the course of his 45-year career.
That seems like a pretty significant gap in pastoral education, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how many other ministers are just figuring it out as they go along. He did develop his own thoughtful approach, though focusing on making services meaningful for the living rather than just following a strict traditional format.
How does he typically structure his services?
He considers factors such as the season, whether it's near Christmas or Thanksgiving, and incorporates those themes. If the deceased was remarkably faithful, he'll mention that, but he really tries to keep things simple and focused on providing comfort for the family.
That seems like a good balance between tradition and personalization.
You know what else caught my attention? He brought up this issue about compensation for musicians at funerals. There's an awkward situation where organists and singers who participate sometimes don't get paid, while ministers usually do, as they're on a salary.
That's a really important point about the business side of funerals that most people probably never consider.
And speaking of changes in the industry, he appears to be quite progressive about certain modern practices. For instance, when asked about cremation, he had absolutely no religious objections, which is quite forward thinking for someone who has been in the ministry for so long.
It shows how even traditional religious perspectives on death and burial are evolving.
Exactly. And perhaps that's what's most fascinating about all this, how we're constantly striving to find a balance between honoring traditional practices and adapting them to serve our evolving society better. It's as if we're slowly figuring out how to make these important rituals more meaningful for today's world while still respecting their essential purpose of helping us say goodbye to our loved ones.